Welcome to the Unforgettable Conversations podcast, where you'll meet people from all walks of life. Everyone from experts in their fields to ordinary folks leading extraordinary lives. We're pulling back the curtain every week on sometimes difficult, often hilarious, but always engaging conversations that promise to be unforgettable. I'm your host, Sandy McKenna. I have been so fortunate over the years to meet many inspiring people who have overcome insurmountable odds. Today's guest is one of them. The deck was stacked against her from birth. She was born to a mother who adored her, but to a father who didn't want her. The roller coaster of ups and downs that followed her throughout her life read like a Danielle Steel novel. Abandonment, adoption, motherhood, divorce, a brain tumor, the glass ceiling, several careers, reinventions, and ultimately finding love at 30,000 feet. But the common thread throughout her journey has been one of determination fueled by love. Her resilience has paved the way for an extraordinary life. Her name, Shannon DalPozzal. Now let's get this conversation started.
Well, you've got a great story to tell, Shannon, and let's start where it all began.
My biological father wanted my mother to not have me. They had been married for about 3 years, and he didn't want kids. He chose a different path, the drugs and alcohol path, but my mom wanted me. So she had me anyway. Mom left him because he would steal her money. She couldn't buy baby food or anything. She had been trying to get divorced this whole time. That didn't work out. It takes like 3 years or something for a divorce to go through if the spouse does not sign the papers. So then it ended up being like an abandonment thing. I think I was about 9 months old, maybe, when she met Robin. He told me that the first time mom had him over for dinner, she had made lasagna. She knew it was his favorite. She spent her entire paycheck. And when he went in the refrigerator to go get something to drink, all that was in the fridge was baby formula and baby food. There was no food. The next morning, he went to the grocery store and he stocked up the kitchen with all the food. And he just took care of mom and I ever since that day. They ended up getting married when I was about 4.5 years old. They had my little brother. They were just great parents, just great people, both of them. When I was 10, they ended up giving me the opportunity to be adopted by my stepfather, Robin. I remember that day clearly sitting in the judge's chambers. I was 9, about to be 10. It was August 10th, 1983. And I sat there with the judge and we had until noon, until 12 o'clock. My biological father had until then to show up, and all he had to do was say, he still wanted me. He still wanted to be in my life. And then they would not change my name, nothing like that. They were going to waive all the back child support. So 12 noon comes around and it's just me and the judge. And I look at the clock and I kind of looked at him and I just said, give me the paper to sign. And he goes, so you know what you're doing? And I said, yep. And I signed the paper. I changed my name from Shannon Elizabeth Romano to Shannon Robin. I actually changed my first name to my stepdad's name and added that, kept the Elizabeth, and then added Hurst. My dad, Robin, that adopted me, my dad, was higher up in the fire service. He'd always told me, Shannon, you screw up, you're going to end up working in the fire department.
Well, not only did you work in the fire department, you worked there for decades.
I did. I ended up working there for 26 years. What a screw up, right? But no, it was good because what I learned so much about myself in the fire service was I just like to help people. I like to do things and fix things for other people. And I just really found my niche there, being that calm voice for people when they were having their just terrible day. That was just my way, I guess, the whole hospitality thing. It's even in 911. You have to be customer service, even when someone's having their most terrible day of their life. You still have to help them find their way to where they need to be so they can move on or take care of whatever issue they're dealing with.
My question for you is, how did you deal with the stress of that? That is a really high stressful job.
It is, especially in South Louisiana with all the hurricanes, and there's high crime there. There's a lot of drug use. And while it's a wonderful place to live and the food's good and everybody likes to have a good time, there's a whole nother side of humanity. And you see that all the time in public safety. Accidentally fell into travel writing. I thought I was going to write romance novels. I started researching how to do that because I wanted a creative outlet, just something to do on my days off. An editor at a local newspaper, he said, well, why don't you come work for me on your days off? I'll teach you the newspaper business so you can get your writing skills honed. So I was like, okay, I can do that. And so I interviewed a lady that wrote romance novels, like Harlequin novels. And then I found out that, wow, they just really don't make a whole lot of money. It's a lot of work for just, so you really have to love what you're doing or have another way to sustain yourself for life, unfortunately. So I knew that I wasn't going to leave for that fire department job anytime soon. I'd saved up my money on the side, and I took my family to the Bahamas on one of these newspaper deals I saw in the newspaper. I was like, oh, that's a great deal. We're going to go to Grand Bahama Island. It's all inclusive. The kids get to go. I think they were like 3 and 5. We get there. Oh, it was like the whole bait and switch thing. Like, it was horrible, 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 horrible. And we still had a great time because you're going to make the most of your vacation that you can. When we got back, I was telling the editor, I said, this was terrible. I said, somebody needs to let people know about these issues that can come along when you buy that great deal that you see in a newspaper or an ad. And he goes, well, why don't you write about it for the paper? And I said, okay. So I wrote about what to avoid or what to look for when you're booking your vacation. Next thing I know, I start getting emails for a press trip. Hey, would you like to come check out our place in Jamaica? I'm like, yeah, how much is this going to cost me? And of course, my dad, when I told him, I said, yeah, I said, I got invited to go to Jamaica and Curacao and they're taking care of everything. And he goes, that's a scam. You're going to get abducted when you get there. And I go, no, I don't know. I just feel like I need to go for this. It's scary, to go be a 30 or 28-year-old mother of 2 and hop on a plane and go to these islands with people I don't know. I've never met them before. I don't know who they are, but I did it. It was a little scary, but wow, what a payoff for taking that big, scary step and just going with my gut, going with that inner voice. You need to do this. You need to do this. And that's where it started, where I had an outlet away from public safety, away from the stress of the fire service, where I saw the whole other side of humanity when people are having their best day of their life because they're on vacation and they're having a great time and they're relaxing and they're away from their normal routine.
And that was really a beginning of almost a second career for you, because you went from, fire safety and 911. And while you were still doing that all the time, you really were a pioneer back in the early days of social media.
My brain always is looking for a puzzle or something new, a new challenge. And social media wasn't really taken off yet. I don't even know that Facebook was around yet, but online websites were. So I started out with an online newsletter and a website called thetravelingfirefighter.com. What I did was I found all these deals for people that were in public safety so they could save money on vacation. And I would write about, a couple of little things. From there, it evolved to other online sites that didn't have travel yet, that I saw a need that needed to be filled. There was a void. So I'd reach out and say, hi, do you need somebody to write about romantic getaways? There was the website called Bella Online at the time. So this is a long time ago. So I started writing the romantic getaways page for this website. So it was more of the micro site. As I kept developing and learning and trying things out, I did come across a few unsavory characters who were scammy. So you learn some street smarts along the way about getting taken for a ride or what can happen, the pitfalls. Ultimately, I kept advocating for the whole online travel. A lot of these places, they go, well, you need a print outlet. So I'd fall back on the newspaper that I wrote for. That was just a very small newspaper, but they would rather have a newspaper where 5,000 people read it than websites where you could write evergreen content and you've got hundreds of thousands of people at the time looking at it. And I couldn't comprehend why they just weren't getting it. Like, hey, print is great. It's really pretty, but this, everybody gets to see this. So it's been fun to be part of that beginning of how things evolved. And when Twitter first started and Facebook, it was so much fun. When Twitter came out, I used that as note keeping. I would take a picture and I tweet it because for me, when I would get back home, I was like, oh, look, I've got a picture of the menu. I've got this, a picture of the food. Now I've got the timeline of how my trip went instead of just taking a bunch of pictures and trying to decipher it when I got back home. And I didn't realize anybody was actually looking at it on Twitter. You are aware of how Twitter, we all evolved. And that's how I met you guys.
Yes.
Was through Twitter. And it was the same thing. You guys were pioneers as well. It's so funny that when you look back now, it really wasn't that long ago, but it seems like a lifetime ago.
The landscape of Twitter is not at all what we experienced when we started. It was truly a conversation. You could really engage and meet people and who have become lifelong friends. We really did take some chances meeting all these people that, at the time, Rick was my business partner and I met him on Twitter. I went and met somebody that had this idea about a company and how to create this travel business. And
yes,
so I went and met him but I wouldn't do that today.
There's a lot of things I think we wouldn't do today because we've just learned the pros and cons of that. With Twitter and with the online, then blogging started. It was started as the word web blog. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, what's this WordPress thing? Let me figure this out. And of course, it's like whenever you meet somebody on Twitter, like when you met Rick and you guys go into these projects together, you got a lot of trust. You have to trust. And so I did that. I was sitting at work one night and I was like, I've met so many people that are, they seem to be really nice people. They know what they're doing, but they need an outlet as well to place a lot of stories. I remember it was about 2:00 in the morning. I registered the domain name travelingmamas.com. And I just sent an email out to a couple of girls that I knew. And I said, hey, look, I got this great idea. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but I think it'd be a lot of fun. It'd just be a place for us to do our stories. And I can show you guys how to use the WordPress site, how to do the stories. So that was just how things just kept evolving from, that the travelingfirefighter.com to the romantic getaways for somebody else to me having my own site. Wow, what a ride. What an evolution of how things went. Because next thing I knew, when there is power in numbers, when you're doing something and you're not alone, you have other people that are excited about it as well, the momentum just really picks up very quickly. For me, I'm like, oh, look, I started with $10. We got this going. It's a business. That's when I learned this is not playtime anymore. This is like a real big, legitimate thing. A lot of lessons learned through there. A lot of fun, a lot of good times. Just the evolution. We all grow up, don't we? We keep maturing as we keep going.
Yeah. In the early days, there were no examples. It was kind of build it and they will come. There were no brands on Twitter. There was no Instagram. We were early adapters. We were there before the brands were there. And we had to convince them that, hey, this Twitter is a legitimate thing. What we're doing is legitimate. You as well as us, Rick and I, did video when nobody else was doing video.
Right. I had my little
flip camera.
Yes, the little flip camera. We were some of the first people to start doing that. And that's just crazy. The first Twitter press trip
Yes.
ever was with Princess Cruises. And that was actually the first cruise I ever went on. That in itself took me down a whole nother road as well with my travel writing career. I feel blessed all the time. We get so many wonderful opportunities, especially when you're really open to it.
Yes.
It was like that trip to Jamaica. It's scary, but you just have to take a step and you just have to go forward. What a journey, what a ride we've been on. And it's not been all roses.
No. And during this time, you're multitasking. You've got the job with the fire service. You're writing for the paper. You've got your blog. You're married with 2 children. And there's some issues there.
There really are. So I worked a lot of nights. I worked a lot of weekends. So whenever I was off work, I very much wanted to do things with my children, with my family. One of the fun sides of how the evolution with the travel writing side of things went, it used to be the solo trips. But because I was starting to do family travel, they were allowing me to bring my children with me. And my husband at the time, if he wanted to go, he didn't ever really want to go. He's like, I want to stay home and work. Okay, well, I'm not sitting here. I'd say, kids, load up, get in the car. I had a little Volkswagen. They get their bags, they get in the car. We take little road trips. We had a great time doing that. But then again, where's the marriage? Where's the relationship? And here I'm writing about these romantic getaways. And I'm finding I'm going by myself to write about these places. So, because I know what's romantic to me, what I needed. And I really wanted someone that was there with me and would have fun. As many marriages do, people grow apart. And then you get into the moment of, okay, are we going to fix this? Or are we going to get this going together again? I'm trying to think what year it was, because I try to block it from my mind, that I found out that I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. I went to the doctor's appointment by myself. I was told that I had a brain tumor by myself. I shouldn't have had to be by myself for these things. And I just remember sitting in the parking lot, finding out that there's this thing in my head, which explained a lot of my fatigue, my headaches, my dizziness. It just makes you take a step back and look at your whole life. What am I doing? So this went on for a couple of years where I kept going to doctors trying to figure out, fix me, somebody do something to help me. Nobody would touch it because of where it was. So even though it was a benign brain tumor, it was still life-threatening. And I think that's what a lot of people don't seem to comprehend, is even though something might be benign in its DNA makeup, its cellular makeup, it's not benign to your life. It affects your life in so many ways. I sat down with my husband at the time once, and I said, do you think if we didn't have kids, would we still be married? And he goes, no. And I said, look, I don't want to continue to work the shift work for till I die, sit in this chair until I die. No. I want to do the things that we had talked about when we first got married. We talked about eventually retiring and moving to the mountains and having another job. And he goes, I'm just not going to leave Louisiana. And I said, well, then we really need to figure something out. And it was about a week or two later, he comes back and he goes, I really didn't mean that. What I said about if we didn't have the kids, we wouldn't still be married. I said, no. I said, you were being honest. You were being honest. So we need to really think about what we're going to do here then, because I don't want this for my life. That was the beginning of the end. That was the beginning of the downward spiral of our relationship as husband and wife. Then he would find all these things that I was doing wrong because it had to be me. Instead of just saying, we did what we were supposed to. We have these 2 great kids. We can still be great parents to them. but it's just not fair to be with each other if we don't want the best for each other. I ended up filing papers, and I felt like that's what I was supposed to be doing. Like, so many people, they're like, I had to ask the receptionist, I said, am I supposed to be crying? Like, I'm sitting in the receptionist's office. Am I supposed to be crying? I'm bringing you a deposit to start divorce proceedings for a 17-year marriage. And she said, no, she said, it's all on what your emotions that you feel. And I said, well, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. She goes, well, there it is. So I was doing the right thing for my life path. Unfortunately, the kids, when they're younger, they only see what's right in front of them. And they, especially my daughter, Lauren, came up with all these scenarios in her head on why did they get divorced? What did mom do bad? Like she just came up with all these stories instead. But now, now she sees that she's in her early 20s. She's like, I'm glad you and dad get along. I'm glad that you're happy. I'm glad he's happy. I'm like, yeah. Look how awesome life is for all of us. We're all happy.
And while that was a sad ending, it made room for your new beginning. Well,
it did, because we were legally separated for 18 months, but I still kept our family things going. Like my parents, they couldn't seem to understand why I want to do this for the kids. That we're going to do things that are great for the kids. And we shared the house. So we didn't want Lauren to have to move out of her bedroom and be displaced or go to a new place, because there was enough change knowing mom and dad aren't going to be married anymore. We even went on a family cruise while we were separated, because our oldest was graduating from high school and we wanted to have one last, hey, this is a change. It's not bad. We can still all make memories. So we went, it was fine. We had a great time, but I had found out when I was there that I had been accepted as a patient at the Cleveland Clinic. Even though we were going through our divorce, I asked him, I said, do you want to go with me to the Cleveland Clinic? Because, how scary to kind of go by yourself, get on a plane to go see doctors. And it's like last resort, last chance in my mind of getting some answers. And he goes, no, I'm good. You go. And I go, okay. So I was going to drive because I was really on a budget. And I was like, well, I got to save money, even though it's my life here. You still got to pay bills because that doesn't stop. And then at the last minute, I said, F it. I'm buying myself a plane ticket and I'm staying in a hotel and I'm going to go have my own little trip there. So I flew to Cleveland. A friend of mine who was a producer from Baton Rouge that moved to Cleveland said, well, I'll take you to dinner, so you won't have to be by yourself at least the whole time you're here. So I went and visited him. I went to my appointment. And so when I got to the doctor's office with all this hope, somebody's going to fix me. Somebody's going to have answers. The neurologist came in and he goes, yeah, I don't know why you came here. He said, we canceled your neurosurgeon appointment for after this. He said, but your tumor's in a spot. I mean, we're just not going to touch it. I mean, unless you are like on your deathbed, we just don't feel comfortable touching. And I remember when he left after saying that, I was so angry. I was so angry. And I got my purse and I just walked out. I didn't check out. I didn't get my scans. I didn't care. I went to the bathroom and I cried and I sobbed because to me, my marriage was over. I did not see any future for myself. And I felt like this is so unfair. And so I walked out the bathroom and I had my sunglasses on. I sucked it up because I was like, well, I gotta go back. I'm leaving. I'm gonna go back home. Just forget this. And I walked out, and I remember looking at all these other patients in that waiting room. No hair, oxygen tanks. And I said, God, as bad as this is for me, it's not that bad. So I said, I'm done. I'm not going to work nights and weekends anymore. I'm not going to throw away the rest of my life working in a job that I'm not appreciated at all. Because that's one thing, Sandy, even though I worked in the fire service all these years, I was a woman working for a bunch of men who are, a couple of them are narcissists. And they would not, no matter how many classes I took, no matter how hard I tried to work my way up that ladder, they kept stomping on me and trying to keep me on the bottom rung of the ladder for 26 years. So it's frustrating. You want to feel validated when you look back at what did you do with your life. You want to feel like you accomplished something. I just felt so defeated that day, so sad. So I went back to my hotel room and I tried to change my flight. I want to go back home instead of staying an extra day. And they said, no, you can't change your flight. You can do a same day flight change in the morning, but we can't, there's no seats. We can't move you. So I was like, fine. So I got a taxi and I went to the Music Hall of Fame in Cleveland. And there wasn't hardly anybody in there. And I just went through it because music so much from my childhood, from before I started at the fire service. And I went and looked at every single one of those artists that were memorialized in this museum. And I read the lyrics, the handwritten lyrics, the stories behind the music. I listened to the music. I listened to the words. And then at the end, there's where they have the award ceremonies, the big theater. And I walked through and I sat down and they start playing parts of different award ceremonies. And they played the song, Let It Be. And it brought such a sense of calmness to me at that moment. The words, just let it be. And I said, I'm fighting all this. What am I fighting? What am I fighting for? And I went back to my room and took a hot shower, had a glass of wine, and said, just go back home tomorrow and just take it from there. And so I did. I woke up the next morning. I still had a little bit of frustration going on because I just felt like that doctor had like no bedside manner. Like the delivery was just such a, I don't know why I came here. Like I just spent like $1,500 to come for you to tell me you can't do anything. But tried to change my flight again the next morning for an earlier flight. Still couldn't do it. I was like, okay, all right, whatever. So I went and took my regular flight. I should back up. I did have breakfast with my little friend, the producer. We went and had pancakes in his apartment. He said, here, I want you to hold my Emmys. So he had 2 Emmys. And I held them in my hands and I go, oh, one for each hand. This is awesome. This gives me some inspiration. I'm holding 2 Emmys before I go back to what just happened. How crazy is this? So I get on the plane. I made sure that my seat, I had nobody sitting next to me when I picked my seat. I was like, okay, this is empty row, last second. That's where I'm sitting. Everybody gets on the plane. I still have my seat next to me empty. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness, because I just really don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to see anybody. I can't people today. And right before the door shuts, this handsome man sits down next to me. He's wearing this plaid shirt, shorts, flip-flops, really laid back. And he goes, hey, and I go, oh, hey. And I just kind of do my thing. And then he gets to talking to me throughout the flight. And he starts telling me about Maine. And I start telling him about my travel writing. And it was like I had met my best friend. Like we hadn't seen each other in a long time and we're just catching up. And it was really, really great. Right before he got off the plane, he said, "Hey, could I get your number? I'd love to have coffee with you and get to know you better while I'm in town." And I said, "Sure." So I gave him my number, and now here we are. We're married. I'm living in Maine in the cottage. I'm sitting in the cottage now that he was telling me about on the plane. And I sometimes have to laugh at the irony of life and just the way the unexpected happens. And we get to be where we need to be. Maybe it's not where we wanted to be, never even imagined it.
There's good news and an update on your tumor.
That's right. Before our first year wedding anniversary, I had gone back to my neurologist in Baton Rouge, who had told me before he didn't want to touch it as well. I ended up going to Mass General, see a neurologist there who said, "No, we don't want to touch it until you're like on the verge of death." I'm like, okay. So my tumor grew. It had a growth spurt, and it was really scary because that's when I found out that my time had run out with this, whatever it was, that journey. So I had the surgery. At first, the surgeon didn't want to do it. He's like, "I'm kind of 50%. I'm on the fence if you should have the surgery or not." He said, "Because I'm just afraid that it's not going to turn out well if we try to remove it." He said, I kind of recommend radiation, but we're going to have a doctor's conference." So all these doctors got together and reviewed my file, and they presented me these options. One was do nothing, and then I would just pass out and never wake up again. The second one was radiation, which would possibly shrink the tumor, but I would possibly get brain cancer within 10 years, and then surgery wouldn't be an option anyway. And then the last one was the riskiest, which was surgery. But where the tumor was, it was about to touch. There's a vein, an artery that goes right through the top of your brain, the sagittal sinus, and my tumor was touching it. So if they went into surgery and nicked it, I would just bleed out and that would be it. So I was like, well, what do we do? So my husband, James, he went with me to all my appointments, which, that right there, that's a big difference from what I was dealing with before. So I had somebody that was there with me, and he went to the radiologist with me, and he went to the surgeon with me. And I asked the radiologist, I said, "If it was your daughter or your mother or your wife, what would you suggest?" And he said, if they were older, I'd say the radiation. But your age, if you do the radiation, you're just going to be dealing with this for a very, very long time. He said, "You guys just got to go with what you feel is the best option for you and know that it's just going to be okay." I said, well, that's what I needed to hear, because I was kind of feeling like that surgery route. And I did it. And my surgeon who did it, he said I was his miracle patient, because it was supposed to be a 6-hour surgery. And he said when he opened me up, the tumor just pretty much lifted itself out. So they were able to not have to shave my head. They were able to sew everything. You can't even tell. I mean, hello, look at all this hair, So minimal recovery time. It did take about a year until I started feeling really good again. But as long as I sleep at night, I'm great. I'm great. And it's like crazy. It's so crazy that because I was good until the surgery, until I went in for the surgery itself. I even had a margarita party 2 nights before where I was having all my friends like, if I don't make it, well, at least we all had a good time, because I tried to be very, very positive and upbeat about it. My parents at the time were really, really nervous and upset. And I remember my mom telling me that she just prayed. She said, "I just pray and pray that I would rather the Lord take me than you." And I was like, "Mom, it's going to be okay." But right before I went into surgery, right before they wheeled me in, because they can't give you anything for your nerves because they're dealing with the brain, I was good until they wheeled me down the hallway, and James had to let go of my hand. And I was just like, I can't do this. And when I said, I can't do this, I was saying, I don't want to die. I I can't let this be the end. That's really what I was saying. I'm still in awe, right? Every day I wake up, I'm so grateful. I'm so thankful. I always wondered, why am I still here? Like, what is it because of my kids? Am I supposed to be here to do some other things? One of the reasons why I was still here was because somebody had to take care of my parents. You know, they didn't stay around too much longer, too many more years after my surgery. But I was very honored to care for them.
I feel very much the same way. I took care of both my parents who died like yours within a very close amount of time. And it was the greatest privilege of my entire life was to be able to do that.
It's true. It's true. And I'm just so thankful for all the travel writing that I did. When I look back, I think, wow, this gave me the opportunity to make so many beautiful memories with the people I love and care about. Because because of that first Twitter press cruise, I ended up getting more cruise invites. And I remember getting invited to the Carnival Magic in the Mediterranean. And I said, can I bring somebody? And they said, yeah, you can bring whoever you want. They just have to buy their own plane tickets. I said, well, if I asked my parents, would the three of us be able to share a cabin? Would that be possible? And they said, yeah. So I said, Mom, Dad, y'all have always talked about taking Dad to Europe because Mom had been there before. I said, neither one of you been on a cruise. I said, here's your opportunity. Let's go do it. And they did. And that was, wow, the memories I was able to make with them. Just unforgettable. And I'm glad that we did that. And then my dad wanted to cruise again. He wanted to go to Alaska, but he kept putting it off. And that was one of the things he said to me on his deathbed when we had one of our conversations. It was the two of us. And he said, I should have gone on that Alaska cruise. He said, I don't know why I kept waiting. I said, I know. And so I try to live by that, like if you want to do something, make it happen. Stop coming up with excuses on why you can't do it. Oh, I got to work. Oh, I have to do this. Oh, I have to do that. No, you must not really want to do it then, because if you really want to do it, you're going to make it happen.
And with all these extraordinary experiences that you had, and you have had, more experiences than somebody twice your age. So what is your takeaway? What do you tell people, your advice for them?
My advice is opportunities are going to come to you. Life is going to have you go a certain direction. And we can either fight it and make that path a windy, long, difficult road, or we can open ourselves up to it, embrace the opportunities, even if they seem crazy. If you know in your heart, in your gut, inside of you, your intuition, that inner voice, if it feels like that's what you're supposed to do, then you need to do it because you're being guided down your path. And when you know it's right, it's right. My advice is trust it. Trust the path, trust the process, just trust it. Always evolve. Don't stop learning. Don't stop moving down your path. I'm in Maine now, and I'm on the verge of a whole nother life for myself that I didn't even imagine I would be going down this road. 10 years ago, would not have even thought it. Has it been easy? No, it's not easy, especially when you do things and there's other people involved because they're not always ready to go down the journey as well. So sometimes you just got to dig your heels in and you have to be determined and not let up, but just love people. Just love people where they're at. They may not be where you're at. I'm so thankful that I met you all those years ago, Sandy. And, when you talk about unforgettable conversations and moments, I will be forever grateful that time we went to Miami and we had a couple of days together. The conversations that we had.
I couldn't think of somebody that is the epitome of resilience better than you. Truly, grace and grit at its finest.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't know if I can agree with the grace part all the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cheers to you, Sandy.
Cheers to you.
As Hunter S. Thompson so eloquently wrote, life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, wow, what a ride. And what a ride it's been. Thank you for listening to the Unforgettable Conversations podcast. If you know someone who might benefit from listening to this podcast, please send it their way. If you would like to connect on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the socials, the links are in the show notes below.